Hey, what's going on with y'all good people? I want to welcome you to the Melanated Travelers Podcast, the podcast that shatters stereotypes that takes you on a captivating journey through the eyes of people of color as they explore the world. Join us as we challenge the misconception that travel is only for a certain demographic. Embark on a vibrant adventure with each episode as we share stories that showcase the rich experiences and perspectives of melanated travelers. From the banks of Cartagena to the mountains of Bali, the Melanated Traveler paints the picture of a vivid image of the global journey, one story at a time. Hosted by yours truly, Aston R. Williams, a podcast for the people. Welcome. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Aston Williams coming to you again with another amazing episode of the Melanated Travelers Podcast. But before we get started, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the previous episodes, please do so. And if you're vibing with the show, please write us a review. That truly helps us get ranked higher in this podcasting world, and also is a way for me to evaluate the show, to see what needs to improve, to see what y'all like, what y'all want to hear, and what guests do y'all want on the show. So I have another amazing guest on this episode. I'm truly excited to get this going. So I have Samya Abdela. She is from the Bay Area of California. So one thing that I do want to tell you, I don't know, I want to ask you, I know this is not like a sports podcast, but like who you repping in the Bay Area. I'm a Raiders fan. I'm just
So am I.
diehard. Diehard Raiders fan.
He's Spade. That's the A's and the
Okay.
Raiders and the Warriors. We don't
Okay.
really, but they've left us, unfortunately,
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
on to bigger and better places, apparently. But yes, my dad is a huge Raiders fan, so absolutely silver and black in this household.
Perfect. So this make this episode even sweeter. So
Yep.
she's from, like I say, she's from the Bay Area, y'all. From California by the way of Eritrean immigrants, and she embarked on this path of discovery, taking a leap of faith, one step at a time. And you've been to how many countries? I want you to say it yourself so people can hear. How
40,
many countries have you been to?
49, just shy of
49.
50. But when this episode drops, I'll be on my way to country 50. So
All right.
that's coming real soon.
There y'all go. Y'all hear 50, 49, and going on 50. This is absolutely amazing. So, like, her adventurous mentality led her to 49 countries, but to be 50, which prepared her into a world of storytelling through her travels. Like your content is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and you share so many good key points and tips. You've been to so many different countries, so like people would say when it comes to a job interview, right? You qualified, you overqualified to talk and be on this episode right now. So we're gonna dive straight into it.
Let's do it.
Just sharing captivating tales, sharing amazing destinations. I'm just so glad to have you on. So anything else you want to add to that intro?
No, that was amazing. I really appreciate that. And thank you for the compliments on the storytelling. I really do aim to share as much as possible, keep it real, let people know what to do, what to skip, because I've sort of gone through that motion myself. So that's kind of the point. I don't know if y'all can see, if you're on the YouTube, you can see the video that says "To travel is to live." That's my motto on this map that I have behind me. And
That's facts.
yes, I definitely wholeheartedly believe that. I feel like I've learned so much just from traveling, whether it's from the people I meet, the history I learn, if I'm doing a tour or just talking to locals. And it's really amazing to see it in real life, right? Obviously, we go to school and we learn about these things. We don't actually learn about them accurately sometimes or fully. And so to just be on the ground in these places that you've read about and really get the tea, it's been a very enriching experience. So yeah, not stopping anytime soon.
I guess we could start off. With just your background, like your upbringing, like coming from a family, coming from a um you know Eritrean, immigrant family. Like how was that? How was that growing up? Like what made you spark your interest into saying, like, you know what, like I want
Yeah.
to touch all parts of the world, like all over the globe.
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I love my mom, but every time I tell her I'm going on a trip, she's like, "Oh my gosh, where are you going now? Why do you need to be there?" Typical Black mama who I
Mm-hmm.
love. And yeah, I would say I did reflect back on this recently because I do get asked sometimes, like, where did this come from? And I will say, growing up, I'm the oldest of three. Two, like you said, Eritrean immigrants who came to this country for a better life. And I'm very blessed to have been born here, to have had the opportunities that I've had. And the fact that I get to travel for leisure, I want to just recognize as a privilege, because there are plenty of people around the world that have to get out of where they are because of unsafe reasons. And so I will say that what they instilled in me was experiencing new things. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
that didn't mean, taking us out of the country every year. That's not something that we could do, right? But they did, you know, they were always taking us on trips, domestic trips. I learned how to ski when I was younger. That's like not a typical thing, but we were not far from, Lake Tahoe, and so we would go every winter. I actually did not like it personally. I was just like, I don't know about all this. But I'm happy that I did it. I'm happy I learned it. It was something to accomplish. And that's one thing that they really instilled in me, like putting your mind to something and excelling at it. That is, and I'd like to think that that is the experience of most people who have parents as immigrants. Like that's what their whole life is built on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming to a country and being challenged and working hard and excelling. And so that was the expectation, whether that was with skiing or in school. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, very, very lucky to have grown up the way that I did. In terms of the travel piece, I mean, yes, the domestic trips definitely inspired me. And I did get the opportunity to go back to Eritrea when I was around 12, which was obviously a great experience. A lot of my family still lives there. So that was great. But it really wasn't until my first trip outside of Eritrea that I went
Mm-hmm.
to with my college roommate. In 2016, I was in grad school at the time, and I went to Jamaica. That was my first country, sort of outside of my parents' country. It seemed approachable. It's a very high tourist destination.
Right.
But I
Right.
didn't know what I was doing. All the friends that I have, all these tips now that I've acquired, Jamaica was not that trip. It was an amazing time. Don't get me wrong. Like I had a
Mm-hmm.
blast, and the Jamaican culture and food and everything about it is a vibe. But I didn't know what I was doing. Like my planning skills were not there yet. I stayed at this all inclusive resort in Montego Bay, as people do, but then quickly realized like I'm just around Americans. This is not the experience that I wanted. I found myself wanting to leave constantly to go get that experience, but then, it's expensive to leave. They charge you a lot from the resorts to take a taxi, and then you're out
Mm-hmm.
experiencing everything, and you're like, well, dang, I already paid for my food at the resort. Let me go back. That all of that. So it was definitely trial and error. I don't regret it at all. It was an amazing experience. I still have to go back to Jamaica one day. I'm sure I will. But that's really the trip that I was like, oh, okay, this world, this is a big world, and I need to see it. And so from there, it was just like the next place, the next place, the next place. I wouldn't say though, and it wasn't until about 2019 ish that I really, really got that itch. Whereas like, I'm on a trip and I'm planning the next trip. That's when
Mm-hmm.
you're really in this. But until that point, it was just taking the opportunities when I could, because I was in grad school, and that's challenging and you're busy and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, my parents just motivated me to do whatever it is that I wanted to do well, and commit to it. And right now, that just happens to be traveling, so I'm committed to that.
I think I just want to take this time to share like this dynamic, and I mean this in the most positive way. And I know the diaspora would agree, especially the diaspora that's here in
Mm.
America, is the fact that, you know, you have a connection, you have a connection to Africa. You have a connection to Africa that a lot of people here, and just to add some context, me growing up in South Louisiana, my particular parish, we special in Louisiana. Everybody else is counties. We parishes.
Yeah.
So in my parish, at one point, my parish was called. The slogan was "Welcome to Plantation Country." Literally, seven or eight plantations, mostly all the major cinemas that you may see, movies that you may see. 9 times out of 10, it comes from my area. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that it's just so powerful, to know and to have a connection. And the reason why I'm bringing this up because I know that you knowing how hard your parents had to work to come here to get into this country is what we see in your content. It's what we see in the way you travel, the way the way you present yourself, your demeanor and your outlook on life. So I just wanted to highlight that for a second, because man, not too many people, even know what part. It's African, African ancestry DNA. You can kind of see where you're at,
Yeah.
but that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
No, I appreciate you highlighting that. It's so real. And I am so lucky to have this experience, and especially having this experience traveling abroad, because I have been with other African American friends of mine where we're traveling abroad and people ask us where we're from, especially when you're on the continent. And I'm
Hmm.
able to say Eritrea. I mean, yes, my parents are from there. I know that I'm from there. And then I have friends that are like America, and they're like, no, 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 but and the world just hasn't. And this isn't an Africa thing. This is also a Europe thing. A lot of African
Yeah,
Americans in
yeah.
Europe,
Hmm.
and they don't really understand the concept of Black people in America. I'm very aware of that, right? Because at the end of the day, you and I are seen exactly the same here in America. It doesn't matter that my parents are from Eritrea. And I've always been aware of that. And yes, just very hyper aware of that. And so, yeah, when we travel to Europe or wherever, and they're not able to communicate that, and people are like, well, what do you mean? And they have to explain. And I always thought that that was unfortunate because, of course, you can create your own personality and your own persona, but it definitely is nice where you can be like, this is where I'm from on the map, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
Definitely.
our brothers and sisters can't do that, unfortunately. And so, yes, I do acknowledge that it is so important, and it's so important to my identity. And I'm lucky to be able to know where that is. So thank you for.
Definitely. Definitely. No problem at all. I think that um especially dealing with Africa. I know you went back to to your homeland, to your motherland, or where your parents are from, and where you're connected. What was another country in Africa that really stood out to you? I want to get to. I already know you're gonna laugh because we was talking in the studio before we got started. But so it was a real, right. I seen you walking with Simba,
Yeah.
and as for me, I probably would have to, I have a son, so I would probably increase my insurance maybe 300K before I take that trip. But one thing that I like about it is that just no fear. You're very courageous. Like, you want to dive into that. Like, what made you want to, you know, do that experience? Like, like participate in that type of experience. How was it? Like, were you
Yeah.
nervous initially? Like, give us some guidelines too, because I
Yeah.
don't want people to go over there, thinking it's yeah. You give us the real. Tell
Yeah.
us, tell us
No,
really how it is.
I get you. I'll be the first one to admit it looks a little bit crazy just being on the receiving end of that video where I'm just casually strolling with some lions. I totally understand. Everyone I've showed that clip to that hasn't seen it on Instagram, they look at me like, "And you're here? Like, you good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I was perfectly fine." So, to answer your sort of preliminary question in terms of how did I get into sort of doing these types of experiences?
Mhm.
When you've been to so many places, I would say you kind of do similar things, right? I want to learn about the history. I want to be in touch with the culture. I want to eat new food. But those activities are sort of the same. The experience itself is different, but like you're kind of doing the same things. I love sunsets and views. Like, I need to find the tallest building in a city and like go up
Mhm.
there, that kind of thing. But after a while, I started thinking about, okay, how about I make it a goal for myself that each country I visit, I get to experience something there that I've never experienced before, outside of like your typical whatever makes up your itinerary. So for me with Senegal, which is where I walked with the lions, it was walking with the lions, right? That's something that I've never done before. Saw on Instagram, that's how I found out about it, and just built it into my itinerary. It's become extremely popular. So the place is called Fatala Wildlife Reserve. It's kind of far from the capital city of Dakar. So
Mhm.
you have to sort of get a driver, spend a night there. I do know some people who like go there in the morning and come back, but that is a lot on you because it's about, I want to estimate like a 5-hour drive one way. So it's
Oh
far.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we just opted to spend the night before, which was helpful. Um, I think my motivation to do these types of things, honestly, is seeing other people do them and then they're fine. Because I'm analytical, right? So I'm like, if this, if lions were eating people, they would be shut down. That's my thought process. So I'm like,
Facts.
they operating, there are people taking these videos constantly. Everything must be up to code. So yeah, I guess that was kind of how I evaluate if I'm gonna do anything that seems a bit suspect. But in terms of the experience itself, it is very contained and very strict. So basically you arrive um at the reserve, there is a guide there. You are handed your sticks. The stick is very important with walking with the lions. They respect the stick. The stick means authority. That's helpful that you're not just like a random person roaming around. I also will note these are lions who grew up in this reserve with people from their birth.
Okay.
So that also helps a little bit. Yes, that definitely helps. And you get a briefing, and the whole experience is not that long at all. Basically, what happens is that you walk into sort of the area where they're going to be. They bring them out, they sit them down. That's really when I got nervous. I was like, oh, they are right here. Like they can just get up at any point, right? So that's what I'm thinking. But then they have us one by one go behind them and take photos with them. I maybe was the fifth person who took photos. So I wasn't the first person, but I wasn't the last person. I will say my group was about 15 people or so. So it's like quite a big
Mhm.
group. And they run these like every hour, these like walking with the lion experiences. So um, every hour in the morning is my guess. And so you take your pictures and then it's time to walk with the lions. And literally all of us, 15 of us, are walking on the left. The lions and the guide are walking on the right. And one by one, we get to walk behind the lion. So if you notice anyone's videos of this, they're usually walking behind the lion. The reason is the guide is in front of the lion and the guide is actually taking your video, which is very convenient. How you get
Perfect.
that
Yeah.
shot, right? And so you're behind them. So again, I'm not saying that they can't turn around and do something. I haven't seen that. That's not my experience. But you just, they tell you exactly where to go, where to stand, how to have the stick. And yeah, it goes by very quickly. You're probably walking with them for about 10 to 15 seconds. It's not, but because there are 15 people in your group, one after the other, and then the lions sometimes get tired, they want to stop, then we'll stop, take photos. The whole experience is like an hour, but with that many people, it's quite, that's what I mean by it's like it's very strict and robust and there's a whole process in place. And they've been doing this. They've been doing this. So yes, there's one guide who's taking the videos, but there's like 5 other people with us for a group of 15. So
With guns.
no, I don't think
No.
any of them.
No guns.
Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, if you've done this in Senegal. I don't know if they had those. No.
I would feel safer if somebody had a gun. I'm sorry. Look, I love Simba, but listen,
I really have to go back to my videos and check. That's a good question. I don't think I saw. But then again, I was focused on doing what they were telling me to do. So that's where my
I
focus
got you.
was.
I
But
got you. Look, I'm saying all this, but I'm acting like I don't do extreme stuff. So I like to hike. Whatever, like tell me what the highest volcano is, or tell me let me swing off a cliff. I mean, I'm like an extreme
have
type
you
person.
skydived?
I have not, and the reason why is
Mm,
because I'm too big. I
fair
tried to
enough.
do it. I tried to do it on
They
my
told you no.
like 25th birthday.
Mm.
They was like, sir, based on your height and your weight, you have to be 200 and like 15 pounds. And I'm just like, my guy, I haven't been 215 since I was in elementary school. That's not
Dang.
gonna happen. That's
How
not
about
gonna happen.
bungee jumping? Do they also cap the weight?
But I never bungee jumped before. But I do want to try that. I do want to try that. Not sure what country I want to do it in, but I do want to try that.
I have
I
a
do want to try.
suggestion.
Hey, go ahead, shoot.
So people have not seen, maybe by the time the episode drops, you would have seen this on my page. But I did do bungee jumping in Uganda over the Nile River, which was an amazing experience. So it sounds like I'm very much a daredevil, but I'm not. But I also want to do these like new experiences in each of the places. So yes, for Uganda, my like unique thing that I got to do there was the bungee jumping. So it's in a city called Jinja. It's about an hour and a half from
Hmm.
Kampala. It was 44 feet, and I will never do it again. Not because the experience was bad. The experience was great, but the feeling of falling. And so this is what scares me for like skydiving, because I've considered maybe doing skydiving if I go to Dubai or like somewhere that would warrant me jumping out of a plane in the sky, in terms of what I could see. But after that bungee jumping experience, I said, I don't know about the skydiving, but the bungee jumping experience was good. I would recommend that people do that. And they have a videographer on site that's included in the ticket. And I got a
Mhm.
wonderful video, and it's amazing. I did call my mom after I jumped. Critical. Call your parents after to make sure, but then you can like flip the camera and show them what you just did from someone else jumping. And yeah, my mom said, you did that. And I was like, well, I'm still here, aren't I? Yes, I did.
Yeah, I'm.
Oh,
I'm a wait. I definitely want to do the learn experience.
yeah.
Um, I want to talk about just the feeling, just for a second.
Yeah.
Um, you know, just the feeling of going back to Africa, like that initial, time that you went back internally. What was going through your head during that time? Like, your first time on the motherland. Like, wow. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting because as I mentioned, the first time I went back was to go to Eritrea. I did go when I was
Hmm.
1. I don't really remember that experience, so we're not going to count it for the purposes of answering this question. When I was 12, turning 13, I went in the summer, which was when I'm a Cancer, by the way, guys, June 25th. So I went around my birthday, and it was interesting. I was excited to go to like see for myself, but also as like a teenager, it was kind of like, oh, I have to go with my mom on this trip. Like it almost was like a drag situation, I think it also, I struggled because I didn't know the language fluently, and like nobody really spoke English. Fair enough. I don't expect that from many places outside of Africa, including, but yeah, I mean, I didn't really get, I think I wasn't an adult, so I couldn't really appreciate necessarily the feelings I was having. I felt like if I went today, it would be completely different. Like it would feel completely different. But to be able to answer your question fully, the first time I went to Africa after that time was to Morocco, and that was in
Mm.
2021. And so that was my first time flying into the continent, like since then, since I was a kid. And that was an amazing experience. I just felt at peace, which is so funny because if you've traveled to Africa, I don't think many people would use the word peace to describe the feeling because it is dynamic, sometimes chaotic, hard to navigate. There are challenges, right? Just like any other place. And so I think people might be surprised to hear that I use the word peace, but there was just something freeing about being in a place where you didn't stick out, that like you look like
Yeah,
everybody else.
you were actually the majority and not the
You are
minority.
actually the majority. I mean, I will say I very much scream American or tourist, so I'm working on that. But um, despite that, I did really feel like, oh, these are my people. Okay, great. Like let's do what we got to do. Um, and so I did experience that in Morocco. I experience it every time I go to the continent. It doesn't matter East Africa, North Africa, West Africa, South Africa. I've been to all regions, which is amazing. I just reflected on it because I just came back from South Africa. So yeah, I've kind of been in all the regions, and it's an amazing feeling. Like I said, there are challenges for sure, but there are challenges anywhere when you travel. Things come up. But that feeling of like home and comfort and peace is
Hmm.
really hard to replicate. And yeah, it can't be manufactured. It's either there or it's not. And I definitely feel it every time I go to Africa. So that's why I continue to do so. I will say 2023 was my Africa travel year for sure. I went to so many African countries this year. And so that was my focus. We'll see if I continue going back to Africa. I will. I want to get to all 54 countries, which is very ambitious. I think I've hit 12 on the continent. So we're going to get to all of them.
That's dope. That's
Yeah,
dope.
but I really, really love it. And anyone that's trying to get people over there, I support that. Even if I've inspired one person to go to Africa, one of the countries I've been to, that's amazing, because they really have it all. Anything that you want out of a vacation, you will find a country in Africa, multiple countries in Africa that can give you that. It's just that one the infrastructure is not the same as different places. And two, they're just, some countries aren't able to market and like dedicate resources to marketing their countries, which is understandable. There are other more important things when you're
Yeah.
governing a
Mm-hmm.
group of people, including
Mm-hmm.
all the basic necessities. So I don't fault them. But I do think some people just don't even know. And I love videos on Instagram that I come across where it's like, that trend recently where it was like, this is not, and they listed all these places where
Yep.
this
This is
wasn't
Africa.
in Africa. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And literally every environment, every type of biodiversity, any type of activity, it's all there. It's all there. And so that's why it sounds like a pitch for like traveling to Africa. It kind of is. Like you really can
Oh, it
find
is. Oh, it
you can
is.
find
Let's
anything
go.
you want
Let's
there.
roll with it.
Yeah, you can find anything you want there. So I encourage you to try it out. Obviously, there are some countries easier to navigate. If you want to start with those, that's fine. But I've met such amazing people on the continent that are happy that I'm there, that I'm happy that I'm documenting the place and sharing it with people that follow me. And so yeah, I'm gonna continue to do that. That's what they
We have listeners, listeners on this show from all over the world, all different races and ethnicities. But to the diaspora, and speak specifically to y'all,
yeah.
it's no reason why we shouldn't, not at least once in our life, at least once, the people that are listening, is to get back to the motherland.
Mm-hmm.
Get back to the motherland and feel a sense of being a part of something that you don't have to prove yourself to be in this room, so to speak. Um, which I do think that dynamic, and I do have friends that are from Kenya and also Ghana, and we have conversations all the time about the um the African experience versus the African American experience, and you know what, honestly, I can honestly say I wouldn't change,
Mm-hmm.
um, the way my upbringing and the way I grew up. I think that on both sides, we both have somewhat of a chip on our shoulder, and we wanna show the world that we here.
Yeah.
So I think that it's great that for the people that are listening and for the people that are watching right now, go back to Africa, connect, make a connection. So let's shift into, so how do you go about finding? You talked about countries, different countries that you visited. The infrastructure is different. How do you go about finding activities? How do you go about just some of your ways and your strategies and tactics to navigate through these countries? And anyone in particular that you want to bring up out of the 49 is fine, or whatever stories you want to share, because I know
Okay.
I know it's a different experience with each one.
Yes. Yes, as I mentioned, it is complicated sometimes to plan these types of trips. It requires a lot of time and energy. You can show up and just wing it, of course. There are people whose personalities align more with that. And if that's you, I urge you to do it the way that feels authentic to you. For me, I need to know what's going on, right? We,
Mm-hmm.
we go in very intentionally. So for me, I will. First of all, I think I want to answer the question that you didn't ask, which is how do I pick where I go? Because I get that
Mm-hmm.
question a lot, right? Like, you know, what's on your list? Like, how do you decide where to go? And this is a topic I wanted to bring up on this podcast is making travel affordable and accessible. Because a lot of times I feel like people think that, it's going to take so much money to go to these places. And I will admit flights to Africa are very expensive. There are ways to kind of get around that, but they are. Um, but generally speaking, travel can be done in a way that makes it doable for you, depending on whatever your budget is. And so the way I pick my flights is flight deals, or the way I pick the places I'm going, right? So I am
Mm-hmm.
subscribed to a platform called Going. It used to be called Scott's Cheap Flights. They'll
Yep,
send
Sky
you.
Sea Flights.
Yeah. And so I have picked up a couple mistake fares. I flew to
Uh-huh.
Morocco, for example. That was 250 round trip from Chicago, which is amazing. And Peru, 250 round trip on Delta, Brazil, 250, like really, really good deals, right? And so obviously when you've cut down your costs in the flight department, you have a little bit more wiggle room. So
Mm-hmm.
really for me, I decide based on flight deals that I find. If I happen to need to go to that place for some other reason, I try to like build in a trip. But I've always said there's not I'm not going to say there's no country I would not visit. There might be a few that I wouldn't visit, but really I'm pretty open-minded to the 197. So for me, it doesn't matter if I'm going this year or 5 years from now. I want to go eventually. So if something comes up, I'm going to take the opportunity. That's kind of how I decide. So once I've decided, right, that I'm going to this place, I do a deep dive. I am on Instagram. I am on Google. It's very easy now to just like, what to do in this place for this many days.
Yep.
And the thing is, I don't just go with whatever I find. I vet it. I look it up myself. I'm looking at Google Map reviews, Instagram videos about the place. It's a very sort of robust process. And I know that that takes a lot of time, and maybe you don't have time to do that, which is why I can do it for you. Shameless plug. We'll talk about that later. But that's kind of how I like decide what I'm doing in terms of navigating. It is 2023. A lot of African countries have the same type of rideshare platforms, whether they not be, the ones that we use in the United States, but they might have their own. So in terms of getting around, that's pretty doable. And then in terms of navigating, I'm trying to think through my countries in Africa and how I was able to, local guides that you can support, whether you find them on Instagram or you get recommendations from other traveler friends. I always ask if I'm going somewhere and I feel like I probably need someone with me. Morocco, for example, I was with a guide the whole time because we were hitting up basically every city in Morocco in like 10 days. And, we needed to get moving. Egypt as well. I was there with a girlfriend of mine. And so we, for safety, we wanted to have a guide with us. So if that's a necessity for my trip, which isn't the case for every place I go to, there are other places where I just explore on my own. I look to Instagram. I look to friend recommendations. But yeah, other than that, activities I find off of Instagram mostly. People nowadays have been doing amazing content on, these are the 10 things you need to do in this place, and with pictures and videos. And it really is there. I will say it does take time to kind of cut through all of that and evaluate it and make sure that it applies to you. But that's sort of my process. I have a Google Doc sheet. I'm the girl on the trip with like, check the Google Doc. You have a question, check the Google Doc. So I have, and that's served me well now that I build out itineraries because, 5 years ago, Samya didn't know I was going to start a travel business. And so I'm lucky that I do have really good copious notes on these places. So I was able to pull from that to build them out now. But yeah, I just keep everything in a Google Doc, lots of links to things. Even with accommodations, I don't want to open the can of worms of like
you good.
Resort hotel versus Airbnb conversation. That permeates the travel world. But I like both. I'm a little skewed to Airbnb a little bit. I'm trying to get more into hotels now because like credit card points, like I understand that kind of thing. But an easy way to find like a really good Airbnb is like Google best Airbnbs in Mauritius. I don't know, whatever country you want to list. And there are articles written, right? Links straight to the, Superhosts and Airbnb Plus. And you can get some really, really dope places that way. So when in doubt, just do a little bit of research and it'll take you straight to where you need to go. And now we have other tools, right? Like ChatGPT. I should use it. I don't use it.
We're going to talk offline about that.
There's so many tools.
I got you.
Okay. Let me know. We'll talk. But that's kind of how I plan my trips. Obviously I get input from people who have gone, be like, hey, I saw you went here. What would you recommend? And the good thing is that I would say the travel content community, our whole aim is to share this information. And so I find that even if I drop in somebody's DMs, I did that recently because I'm going to Mexico City and was like, hey, I saw you lived in Mexico for a while. Do you have any recommendations? And they were so happy to share. So don't shy away from just DMing people that you already follow. Like most of us will respond nicely. I can't speak for everybody, but yeah, like they should give you recommendations. So, and that highlight feature is key. Anytime I come across a new Instagram page where I'm like, oh, this is good content, let me just scroll real quick. Have they been to anywhere I'm going? Okay, let's sit down. Let's click through all these stories. And yeah, I do it just like anybody else does it. Just because I make my own content doesn't mean I'm not constantly consuming other people's content, because I am. I stay on this phone. So yeah, that's how I plan.
I think let's shift gears. You're you've been to 12. You've been to 12 in Africa.
Hmm.
Um, what about some countries that it was the opposite? Now, we are the minority. Like for instance, Ireland
Mm,
and some of these places that you visited in Europe.
yeah.
Like how was that? How was those experiences for you?
Yeah. Good good shift. I would say no, I mean I think it's fair. Obviously I encourage people to go to Africa, but I've been to many countries in Europe as well. And so I encourage you to do that as well. Um I didn't find it challenging or obviously I didn't land and feel like we're home,
Hmm.
That's not home. But I really didn't have any trouble in Ireland or like these Eastern European countries, Austria, Hungary. Everyone was so welcoming. I didn't have any negative experiences. I think they're just used to so many tourists at this point, these types of countries, that it's sort of par of course for them. But Ireland, it's so funny. I didn't know anything about Ireland before I got there. My knowledge of Ireland was like, okay, Irish at St. Patrick's Day. Like yeah, my historical knowledge of the place, cultural knowledge, I had no idea. I will say they love Americans in particular due to the, Irish versus English and America getting involved, as we do with a lot of conflicts. We don't have to talk about that. So
Hmm.
they love, when they were like, "Oh, you're from America. Oh, welcome." And there were places with American flags up. It was very interesting to me. I was like, "Oh, okay, like I get to lean on my American what's the right word? It's not culture. It's
Privilege, you could say
privilege or
it.
yeah, they rocked with us, right? So I was like, "Oh, okay, this is great." But in terms of being a black person in Ireland, I couldn't. I had a blast. I'm not gonna lie. Like they know how to have a good time. It doesn't matter if it's Tuesday night or a Friday night. There are gonna be pubs that are popping, live music. I love live music. It doesn't matter what genre. Like if you can do what a lot of people nowadays can't, which is like sing live, it's impressive to me. So I enjoy that kind of stuff. So I did that. Ireland also kind of reminded me of California in terms of its terrain. And I love, you were mentioning hiking. I do a hike on every vacation I take. That is definitely part of the schedule. And some of my
Perfect.
friends don't like it, but that we need to see it from above, right? And the best way to do that is usually a hike. So the hiking in Ireland is amazing. The cliffs of Ireland are amazing. I was able to go to Dublin is right on the east coast of Ireland, but I was able to go to the west, to the north. I
Hmm.
even went to Northern Ireland and visited Belfast. Did not know any of the history with Northern Ireland and their relationship with the UK. They're part of the UK. So just all of that. And that's why I love traveling, because it's not until you get to a place that you're like, "Oh, okay, tell me more about XYZ."
Yeah.
And when you're hearing about it and you're physically there, you can really resonate with it and it really sticks. You know what I mean? I went to Ireland last year, but I can tell you everything that I learned today, right? Because it just sticks in a different way than if you're just reading about a place. You should, I encourage people to read and know history in different regions, but being there is different. So Ireland was amazing. I would go back to Ireland one day. I say that a lot about these places because my goal is to see as many places as possible. But Ireland is cool. I highly recommend. It's a quick flight from the States, especially if you're on the East Coast. So if you haven't been, check it out. I think it's a great navigatable place. You will need a car if you do want to explore sort of like the terrain that I was talking about on the West Coast and the North. But Dublin also has a lot to offer in its own. So yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. It was a last minute decision to go there, and I'm glad that I did. So I recommend Ireland, Eastern Europe. I haven't had any issues personally. Um, yeah, I almost think Western Europe, when it comes to like race, and that is worse than Eastern Europe. You would think because Eastern Europe doesn't see us that often, but they cool,
Hmm.
they
It's
good.
funny. It's funny how everything in the West is worse. I'll
Yeah,
leave it
just
alone.
in
I'll
general.
leave that alone. I'll leave that
Yeah,
alone.
yeah.
I won't go there.
Yeah, we'll leave
Won't go
that.
there.
But yeah, so that was my experience there. Um, I actually lived in Europe for 6 months last year, so that's why I was able to explore a lot of Europe. So as I mentioned, this was my Africa year, 2023. 2022 was my Europe year. 2024 might be my Asia year. We'll see. I need to explore that region. I've only been a couple countries over there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I lived in London for 6 months, which was a great experience. I never studied abroad. I didn't have that opportunity, so it kind of felt like a adult study abroad, which was amazing. And yes, it allowed me to quickly get to many European countries. Obviously, when you're already there in the continent, it's cheaper to fly between these countries in Europe specifically. So yeah, I hit up a lot of places that last year, and that was really great. I enjoyed it. I didn't have any negative experiences, I would say.
Perfect. Do you ever we call it stacking where I'm from. Like when you go to a country like multiple countries in one trip,
Yes,
or do you
I
like
love
okay,
that.
okay,
Yes,
yeah, I was about to ask you, but that yeah,
I love
that's
stacking.
different ways people can yeah. Hmm.
Yes, I love stacking because it's sort of like if you flying all that way, and especially when we're getting into like Europe where the countries are small and very, the transportation is really easy to get from one place to another, whether it's a train or a plane. I highly
Hmm.
encourage that. I mean, if you can hit two countries at one time, I mean, why not? You're already there. It does require coordination. It does require a little bit more time. So it also depends on like how long you have to vacation. But depending on where you're going, will dictate how long you should stay in a place to sufficiently sort of explore it. But I'm a big fan of stacking. I don't think I've gone to a single country trip since 2021. No, and even then, yeah, 2021, I went to Guatemala in May. That was a single country because it was like a quick Memorial Day trip.
Yeah.
But ever
Hmm.
since, ever since then, so some of my stacking examples, just to give the listeners some examples, Croatia and Greece, I stacked together. They're roughly near each other, similar type of vibe. So for packing purposes, it's pretty. You're good. You can wear the same thing for both. So Croatia, Greece, I've stacked Senegal, Gambia. They're right next to each other. They actually used to be the same country together before the colonizers came. So Senegal and Gambia. I stacked Ghana with Ivory Coast. A lot of people will do Ghana and Nigeria, but I had a friend living in Ivory Coast, so I stacked that. I stacked Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi recently. So those three are all sort of right there. Um, have I stacked anything in South America? I'm trying to think. Oh, Panama, Costa Rica. Stacked
Yeah,
those.
yeah, that's
They're right next to each other. Um, I'm trying to think. No, Colombia was on its own. Peru was on its own. Chile was on its own. But those would work. You could do that if you had a lot of time. And then Europe, so many. I mean, I'm not even gonna give those examples. You can look just from the map. Like you could really be, for example, like Luxembourg. I went there for 4 hours. It's tiny, right? So I just stacked it with Belgium
yeah,
and France because they're all like right there. So it's definitely doable. It's also very doable in Asia. So I hope in the future to be able to do like a Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore,
yeah.
situation.
I want
Cambodia.
to check out Cambodia, like
Yeah,
for whatever reason,
Cambodia.
like
They're on my list too. I hope to
because
go like early
you don't
next
see
year.
too many people talk about that.
No. And that's another thing. Going to places that not a lot of people talk about. So I already said I pick my places based on deals. So if it happens to be in a touristy place, it happens to be in a touristy place. One way to combat like so many people being there is going on off season. So I don't know if anyone has spoken. I'm sure they have on this podcast about that. But that significantly reduces costs as well. If you're going during a time where not a
Mhm.
lot of people are there, you do have to be, conscious of the weather. But really, some of these places, these tropical type places, even if it says it's going to rain, it rains for like 10 minutes and then you good. So do your research on that. But yeah, I would say stacking is definitely a way that I travel. I just think it's efficient and I love efficiency. So I'm like, if I'm there, let's do it. Let's do it. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's amazing. So like for those that just getting out there, this is a very efficient way. So like she's saying, if you're already in the country, whatever country that is or continent that you're on, right? There's so many different ways you can get creative. Like a prime example, like Colombia. Like if you fly into Colombia, and let's say you want to go to Ecuador, you want to go to
Hmm.
Brazil, those flights, Chile, like
Hmm.
those flights are super cheap,
Hmm.
super cheap. And
Absolutely.
I haven't done it yet because this little country on my head just keep pulling me back. But I'm about to break away. I love you. I love Colombia. I love you. I'm about to break away. I got to get to Africa. I
Yes.
gotta I gotta get to Africa.
Do
I
you know
gotta get
which,
to
which
Africa.
country you want to go to first? Do you have an idea?
I'm thinking Kenya. Thinking
Okay.
Kenya. Don't ask me why, but I mean
No, that's
I'm thinking
perfect.
Kenya. Yeah,
That's a
I want to hit up that east side. Yeah, I want to start there and see what's up with it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to all my friends in Kenya, by the way. You know,
Yeah. Shout out.
yeah. So it's absolutely amazing. I wanna double back to the Airbnb versus hotel for just for a second.
Okay.
Um, because for me, I think it all depends on what type of traveler you are. I personally, I will go to the local markets and get fresh fruit, get meat, whatever. Go to and I actually I like to cook. I like to cook. So for me, I prefer Airbnb. It's a little bit more flexibility for me.
Mhm.
So I think it just all depends on how you travel. I honestly have never stayed in a hotel yet.
Wow.
I've
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Okay.
No, no,
Then you wouldn't be offended by my comments around how
no, no, no. I'm not offended at
Airbnb.
all.
Okay.
No, no, I'm not
I mean,
offended.
it's something out there for everybody, right? If
Yeah,
that's how that makes sense, you like to cook. And I will say, for me, when I travel, I love to cook at home. When I'm traveling, the most I'm probably cooking is breakfast. But even then, like when I went to Costa Rica, I went for my 26th birthday and I brought along four other friends. And it was my birthday, but obviously I planned the trip because I'm the travel girl. But I was cooking breakfast every morning for everybody, and they were helping me. And that's just, that's like an activity right there, right? Just like cooking, just like you would
yes.
home. And so having the Airbnb made that possible, right? So, but I do understand some people, their comfort level around their accommodations, they just want, you know, and it's funny, I don't want to say like security because I've never felt unsafe in an Airbnb personally, but
Hmm.
they're just different ways to travel, right? Like they're just more comfortable with that. And so it's whatever works for you. I just knew after that Jamaica trip, like resorts. I mean, if my future man wants to take me to a resort, I'm not going to complain. But resorts, all inclusives, that's not going to work for me because I want to be able to like get my food from places I want to get it from, you know? But in terms of planning, it's very easy to book a resort with an all inclusive. And I understand why one would want to do that, especially like
Yeah,
if you want to be drinking a lot. I don't drink. So it's like the benefits of those don't apply to me. I'm not the target audience for that. So you just got to figure out what you like. But I do encourage people to try Airbnb or try Verba or whatever these platforms if you've never done it. And the number one thing I hear from people who have never done it is they're worried that what they reserve isn't going to be what they show up to. And I do think the best way to combat that is to be very thorough in your vetting process, reading every review, looking at the pictures. I understand it's 2023, things can
yeah.
happen, like people can be dishonest, but I've been traveling and staying in Airbnbs for 7 years. I've never showed up to an Airbnb and said, "What is this?" Right? Like that's never been my experience. I've been very lucky, but I'm also very um on it when it comes to reading these reviews. And the reviews will tell you everything you need to know if you really take your time to, like, again, all of this is just time and energy. So I understand it's easier to just say, oh, I'm just going to stay at a hotel, but try it out. You may enjoy it. And some of these Airbnbs give you access and views that you would not get at a hotel unless you were staying like at a
Yeah.
five star
I'm a
level.
balcony type of person. I love a good
Oh
balcony with a
yeah,
good
I
view.
need a balcony. I
I
need a
will pay
balcony.
extra for a balcony and a good view
Yeah.
any day.
And a pool. And yeah, I've stayed at some amazing properties that were Airbnbs. And like people,
Hmm.
when I show them and I don't say it's an Airbnb and I just show it to them, they're like, oh my God, what hotel is that? These are places that look that good, right? So it's on there. You just have to be able to find them. Um, and just do your diligence in like figuring out if it's a good thing for you. So that's
The
my
only the only thing I don't like about Airbnb that I'll share from a
yeah,
creative perspective, you already know where I'm going with this. And if so happened that this podcast blows up and the CEO of Airbnb listens to this episode, you made a very bad decision by taking away the affiliate program for creatives like ourselves to market the listings.
yes, yes,
That was
yes.
a big mistake. That's the only thing I don't like about it. That's the
Yes,
only thing.
I will say that is, yes, that's a downside for sure because there's no loyalty program. Like we can take that even a step further. There's
Yeah,
nothing, you're booking and then that's it, right? Whereas I understand, like I alluded to earlier with the hotels, at least it's like credit card points, which, apply to Airbnb in a different way. But they are really encouraging people to stay at the same brand of hotel because there's a whole robust system, and Airbnb doesn't have that. And it's like, you should, like, people are staying at your properties multiple times a year. There should be something. And then, yeah, from the creator's perspective, I didn't start taking travel content creations as serious until after that program was rolled off. So I don't even know what that program looked like. But yeah, I feel like anything that could help creators in a way that just kind of compensates them and encourages them to do what they're already going to do. So that's another reason why I started getting more into I'm already going to share this. So you might as well, it would be nice to kind of get something in return.
Right. Right. That's what I feel. And I
Something to
stayed in
share.
some amazing places, but I just wish I,
Mhm.
was able to get some incentive from it.
Yeah.
Instead of just sending a link and I'm not benefiting from it at all.
Yeah.
That's my only gripe with Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I think my last two questions is, how do you travel? It seems to me that you're more so of a loner.
Ooh.
A person that normally travels alone, or you like to travel with a group, or kind of like a mixture of the two.
That is so funny. I love that you think I travel alone. I am not a solo traveler. As
Oh
much
wow, okay. I'm big wrong.
I know, as much as it looks like I am on Instagram because, I'm creating content around myself. I will say, like Belize, obviously that was a big group trip. It was my 30th birthday. I went in June. I had an amazing time. I brought 5 of my other girlfriends along, and they were well, documented in the content. But I rarely solo travel. For me, as an extrovert, I really enjoy being around people. And more importantly than being around people, because it's not like I only travel with big groups. That's not the case. Most of my trips are with one other person. And before y'all start thinking like, she got a man on the no, I'm single. But it's usually one other girlfriend each trip. Because I travel so frequently and I understand that I'm, privileged to do that. Most of my friends can probably travel with me like once a year, and it's their big trip of the year with me. But I do that with like all of my friends, if that makes sense, like separately, depending
Yeah,
on their
no,
schedule.
gotcha.
Yeah, so it's usually a duo. It's usually me and a girlfriend. I will say I have been solo in some of these places. So Eastern Europe, I was solo. Ireland, I was solo. And Cape Town, South Africa, specifically, I was solo. But actually, the friend that I went to Croatia and Greece with happened to be in Cape Town at the same time, which was, the last time I saw her was that trip 2 years ago. So that was amazing that I was able to connect with her, but I technically
Hmm.
was alone. But every other country that you see in the 49, it was with somebody else or a couple people or a group of people. So I'm definitely not a solo travel girl. I feel like that may change with time, with my own
Hmm.
comfort. For me, it really just boils down to being able to share the experience with someone. People are like, "Oh, you don't solo travel because of safety," and maybe that's in the back of my mind, but for me, it's really enriches my experience when there is someone there that I can talk about the experience with in real time, that I can brainstorm ways to troubleshoot when things go wrong. Like one time I left my rookie travel mistake. I don't know how I did this given how much I've traveled, but I left my little wallet on the aircraft and left a Turkish Airlines flight. And
Oh,
we had like an hour layover for our flight to Greece. And if you've ever left anything on a plane, it's a whole process, especially in Istanbul. It's a huge airport. And so I needed to like go to the baggage claim to then retrieve my items. But in order to do that, I had to purchase a visa, even though I was just transiting. It was this whole thing. I get there, they're not anywhere near actually finding my item. And so I had to make a game time decision. I'm like, I need to, because if I miss this flight, we had another flight to Santorini. It was a whole thing. So luckily, I was transiting through Turkey on the way home. So I knew I could eventually get my items at that point. And so I decided to leave and make the flight. But remember, that was my wallet. Luckily, my passport was separate. It was in my pocket.
yeah,
Very, very, very
yeah. I was
lucky.
about to ask you, but
Yeah. But my money, my cards, all of that was in that wallet. My friend spotted me the whole Greece trip that we were together. And it's a blessing I had that, because if I wasn't traveling with somebody, I don't know who would pay,
facts,
how, and I would get my,
facts.
it just would have been
Love
impossible.
this perspective. Love it.
So for me, it's been super beneficial to just have somebody, just in case something happens like that. But I love my solo travel girlies. There are many of them on Instagram. They are killing it. It's just not my innate personality. But I'm trying to do it more and more. You can't. I will say, if you're trying to decide between going on a trip and going, waiting to go with someone else, just go on the trip. Just go on the trip. Like you'll be fine. And then the beauty about traveling is you're always going to meet other people that are also traveling, and then you make friends with them that way. For example, one quick story. When I went to Mykonos, I did go with my friend, but she left early. And by that point, she had like transferred money, so we were good with that. I was solo in Mykonos for 30 minutes because I checked into my hotel and I went up to the pool and I met a girl named, shout out Renata. She's Brazilian, and she at the time was living in London, and she was also solo. And literally I spent my entire time with Mykonos with this girl. And so that was perfect. Sorry, y'all.
Oh, you good.
But so I spent my entire time in Mykonos with her, which was amazing. And cut to moving to London, she ended up leasing her place to me. And so I had a place to live because of this girl I met 30 minutes into being in Mykonos.
Wow.
So I have so many of those types of stories where like you meet somebody, you really connect with them. And, I might have not met her had I been with somebody, right? And we would have been doing our thing, and maybe we wouldn't have said anything to her. You know what I mean? So there are definite benefits to solo traveling. It's just, you got to figure out what works for you, but don't let other people not being able to go stop you. If you do your research, there are plenty of places that are completely safe for solo travel. I recently went to Qatar on my own. That was an amazing experience. I met a bunch of travelers. So don't let it stop you. But yeah, that's a misconception that I'm a solo traveler. I'm not. So
Yeah,
maybe.
I think for me, where I am 100% until, like I said, single as well, until I, you know, just so happen to run across somebody. But until then, I'm gone. I'm
Mhm.
gone. I've tried multiple times to try to get a trip going with people, and it's just like,
Yeah.
you know what? Because when I tell you I'm going, 9 times out of 10, my ticket is already booked. So I'm telling you, like, hey, this is my flight number. Like, I'm gone. I'm
Hmm.
going. I want to take this time out to talk about the entrepreneur side. So you have a new business. I want you to tell everybody about it. What made you decide to not only be a creator but also take your niche and turn it into a business. So let's dive deeper into that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yes. So as someone who has been planning trips for themselves, for their friends since, I guess, 2016, technically, when I went on that trip to Jamaica, I've had people say, why don't you have a travel business? Like, you go to all these places, you share all this knowledge on Instagram. You're the one planning all the trips for yourself, for your friends, group trips, all that kind of stuff. um yeah, why don't you share this information, in whatever way feels authentic to you, right? Whether
Mhm.
that's like planning trips for people or just getting on calls with people and just sharing what information that I know. Because honestly, everything I've accomplished in the travel space, whether it's sponsorships or just collaborations, which I'm just now sort of scratching the surface on, have been because of other people, being open to sharing their knowledge, their wisdom. And so, yeah, this year I was yet again asked, are you start, and it's always been something in the back of my mind. And it always felt like not too much work because, again, back to that very first question, working hard is something in my DNA. That's not to be questioned. It was more of a an assurance around being able to do it, right? And just being able to be successful at it, and giving people exactly what they want and all those things. So yeah, I dived in. I created an LLC over the summer, kind of did all the paperwork for that, opened a website, started working on that, creating itineraries, designing them myself. The cool thing of because I'm a content creator, I have so much content. I have so much original photos and videos, and so I was able to incorporate those into my
Mhm.
itinerary. So when you download an itinerary, purchase and download one of the itineraries, all the images are images that I took, pictures that I took. I have links to everything. So places I've stayed, where I've eaten, day to day, time by time. I know most or some people are not travelers like that, where they need an agenda, but it's there just in case you would you would like to follow my agenda. And all of these trips are usually based on what I did, because it's one thing to be like, oh, you should go do this. But these are all places that I've been to personally, that I did the activities, and you'll see the pictures that reflect that. And so I wouldn't ever send someone off to go do something just randomly, right? It's something that I've experienced that I think that you should as well. So you'll notice that there's currently about 12 itineraries. Obviously, I've been to more than 12, but I want to be very intentional about the itineraries I create and the information. It needs to be sufficient enough for me to be comfortable to put it out there. But that's kind of how it,
Definitely.
yeah, that's kind of how it was born. Let's say, you want to go to a place that's not one of my itineraries, or it is, and you want a little bit something more custom. You can also just hit me up to build you a trip. I'm happy to do that. If you obviously have seen my own experiences and trust my travel style, I'm also happy to customize it to you. So yeah, I'm excited to just build trips for people. I love, selfishly, when I give suggestions and people love it,
Yep.
one thing that comes to mind is in Lisbon, I did the Black in Portugal tour, which is a very unique walking tour experience, specifically talking about the history of Black people in Portugal, which is a very complex experience. As you know, the Portuguese were one of the first colonizers in Africa.
Yep.
And just learning how they don't talk about it in their history classes, like there's this complete erasure. And the guy who does it, his name is Naki. Shout out to him. He's amazing. He's from the continent and he runs these tours. And I had a friend who's Vietnamese who was interested in doing something similar in Lisbon and was like, hey, do you have any recommendations for Lisbon? This is the first thing that I thought of. And she did it and it was amazing and she loved it. So I definitely focus on Black experiences as much as I can. That's something for me that's important. Even if I'm not on the continent, I'm gonna find us. We everywhere, right? So it doesn't matter what country. I'm like, okay, Colombia is Palenque, Lisbon is this tour. Like there are places. So that's always included. But when it comes to custom, it can be anything. Whatever you want to focus on, I'm happy to plan. And then there are just calls. If you just want to hop on a call with me, ask about anything travel related. Let's say you just got your passport, you don't know where to go, or you're thinking about Africa, but there's a lot of visas. How do I, go about that? And then recently I've had people DM me about content creation, which is very touching and makes me think, wow, okay, people really like the content. Because I'm just, doing what I do. So I've had a couple people reach out about like, how do you create your content? Like, can you share that kind of information? So anything that you want to talk to me about, you can. There's like time that you can book kind of thing. So that's the concept. The company name is Stamped with 2 Ds. I don't know how I was really struggling with the name, to be honest. It's hard to come up with a business name. I'm sure
it
you
is.
understand. So
yes.
But Stamped, it's short, it's sweet. You think of passport stamps, that's what this is about. And yeah, so you can find out more information from stamped.com. The website is live, so feel free to head over there. Yeah, and I'm just so excited to do this. It's something that I know I can do. And it's really just getting over that initial, barriers, maybe mentally, that get put in place. Like, I don't know, would anybody need this? Would anybody like this? And it's just put it out there. You will be surprised. I'm sure you had the same experience with the podcast.
Yeah, same experience. You just got to put it out there. And
yeah,
I just, like I told you, I was a fan. I was a fan. I enjoy your content. It's just the thought. It's amazing whenever you're another creator looking at another creator, and the way we think different of how we want our videos to be set up, the message we want to present. It's just your storytelling is it's amazing. It's amazing. And you know what? How can people follow you? Let's put all that information out there.
Yeah.
How can people follow you and support you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So on Instagram, it's Samya Travels. So just my name, Samya Travels. That'll take you, if you go there, you'll get to everywhere else you need to go. So when you go there, you'll see a link to my website in my bio. And you'll be able to click there, and there's on the contact page, it's hello@stamped if you want to contact me business wise. If you want me to plan your trip, et cetera, you can contact me there. Yeah, I'm really only on Instagram right now. I'm trying to work on expanding, but as you know, different platforms operate differently. So, I've been told, get on TikTok, girl. Where you at? But I'm 30 and TikTok to me seems very foreign, which is very sad, because I'm not that old, but I need to figure out a way to be able to do
We
both.
we gonna talk on we gonna talk
We'll talk
offline, but
offline.
I will share this on the podcast right now. Is that for those that want to get into the space is um you don't necessarily have to be everywhere
Mm,
to share your message, whatever you feel comfortable with. The only thing that I feel like what gives, and I'm an Instagram person, let me just say that.
mm,
But one thing that I feel like gives TikTok just a slight advantage right now in the social space is that you get eyeballs instantly. Like
mm,
soon as you make a post, like
mm,
literally within the first 20 seconds,
mm,
you already got 40 people that looked at your
mm-hmm.
content. That's the only thing I like a little bit better than TikTok. Come on, Zuck. Come on, Zuck. Get it together, Zuck.
Get it
Get it
together.
together. Get it together, Zuck. And
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say about that.
and I have heard that the the benefits of being a creator on that platform is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I have heard that. So yeah, hopefully, that'll be a work in progress. But yeah, that's how you can reach me. I will say by the time this episode drops, I'll have a sort of like a free travel guide that you can download as well. So in order to get that, you just have to DM me your email address and on Instagram, and I will shoot that over to you. So
All
want to
right.
be able to share like in different ways, right? So you got the stories, the reels, the pictures. But some people just want, the straight up tips, how I book my flights, how I find these things, how I plan my trips. All of that will be in the little guide. So feel free to DM me for one of those as well.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, look, it's amazing. I really do appreciate you getting on. And I hope that, well, not hope. I know that people have gotten a lot of gems out of this episode, and I truly appreciate you. Like I told you offline, you family now. So look, anytime you want to collab, anytime you want to go live on IG or any other platform, you just let me know. But I really do appreciate it, and thank you for telling travel through your eyes and pushing the culture forward.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for the platform to be able to share this with people. If you made it to the end, this is my first travel related podcast I've ever been on. So thank
I
you
feel
for the
special.
opportunity. Yes, you are very special. And I will take you up on that offer. I'll probably interview you on an Instagram live or something like that. I'll hit you up separately on that.
Yeah, let's do it.
But no, this was amazing. I had such a good time. I loved all your questions. And yeah, I cannot wait to hear the other podcasts, honestly, from season 2. So
All right. Season two drops November 10th, y'all. November 10th. So it'll be out. It'll be out.
I mean, if they're
So
hearing this, it's out, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, technically it's out. Sorry, y'all.
We here, we
Precursor.
live.
We're live. We're live. But look, I really do appreciate it. And like I said, for all my listeners and my viewers, y'all know my motto. I'll see you at the top because the bottom is just too crowded. Peace. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed the episode because it definitely was dope to record it with that amazing guest. Tell a friend to tell a friend if you're really vibing with us. If you're feeling the episode and you really enjoyed it, make sure that you write a review on all the podcast platforms. Make sure that you follow The Melanated Traveler on Instagram. You can also check out the video podcast on my page at Aston R. Williams. And if you want to follow your boy, Aston R. Williams at all social handles. Again, this is the Melanated Travelers podcast, and I'll see y'all at the top because the bottom is just too crowded. Peace.